Shalom. I want to first off by giving all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which I learned is true from. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, and uh, peace salutations to the sisters listening and learning in silence. Speaking low, it's about 6 in the morning where I'm at, so trying to speak in a loud enough tone, but Lord willing, you can hear me, and this lesson be edifying. You feel me, real quick. Says they have already set up the internment camps. The Washington State Legislature is slated to vote on a measure that will authorize the involuntary detainment of residents as young as 5 years old, COVID-19 concentration camps, for failing to comply with the state's experimental jab mandate. It passed WAC 246-100 will allow local health officers at his other sole discretion to issue an emergency detention order causing a person or group of persons to be immediately detained for purposes of isolation or quarantine. Health officers are required to provide documentation proving unjabbed residents subject to detention have denied requests for medical examination, testing, treatment, counseling, jabs, decontamination of persons or animals, isolation, quarantine, and inspection of closure of facilities prior to involuntary confining unjabbed residents in quarantine facilities, the proposal states. The measure also allows health officers to deploy law enforcement officials to assist with the arrest of uncompliant Washington residents. But we all know that this is, Washington is where they, create these bills and pass these laws, but eventually they become statewide. And usually what Washington does, California does right after, or New York will do it, then California, and then all these major metropolitan cities and states will begin to follow. But going into that, this bill, and I'm just proving that this is part of prophecy because people seem to believe that FEMA is not part of prophecy. This is Washington State Legislature. This is from the website, the official government website. It says procedures for isolation or quarantine. At his or her sole discretion, a local health officer may issue an emergency detention order causing a person or group of persons to be immediately detained for purposes of isolation or quarantine in accordance with subsection 3 of this section, or may petition the Superior Court for an order to take the person or group of persons into involuntary detention for purposes of isolation or quarantine in accordance with subsection 4 of this section, provided that he or she has first made reasonable efforts which shall be documented to obtain voluntary compliance with requests for medical examination, testing, treatment, counseling, jabs, decontamination of persons or animals, isolation, quarantine, and inspection of closure of facilities, or has determined in his or her professional judgment that seeking voluntary compliance would create a risk of serious harm, and has reason to believe that the person and or group of persons is or is suspected to be infected with, exposed to, or contaminated with a communicable disease or chemical, biological, or radiological agent that could spread to or contaminate others if remedial action is not taken, and has reason to believe that the person and or group of persons would pose a serious and imminent risk to the health and safety of others if not detained for purposes of isolation or quarantine. And really that goes into that HR 6666, and that's a House resolution um, bill that they came up with back in 2020, and that's the contact and tracing. Um, but really, the main point I want to get to is down here. I'm gonna just read this. A local health officer may invoke the power of police officers, sheriffs, constables, all other officers and employees of any political subdivisions within the jurisdiction of the health department to enforce immediately orders given to effectuate the purposes of this section in accordance with the provisions of RCW 43-20-050 and 70-05-120. If a local health officer orders the immediate involuntary detention of a person or group of persons for purposes of isolation or quarantine, the emergency detention order shall be for a period not to exceed 10 days. Let me read that again. The emergency detention order shall not be for a period not to exceed 10 days. And if you read on, you can go on this website, you can read on, and you can actually see, everything that they're talking about. Slovakia. I just wanted to, and this is what a lot of us gonna go through, but this is what Yahweh Shai said, because a lot of things he's speaking on in these times. So, and this is something that we should always know, just living in Babylon. It's Matthew 5:25, agreeing with thy adversary quickly, whilst thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. And we know that adversary is talking about Esau Edom, because he's going to be coming with not just police officers, because these police officers ain't going to be no help in that day, because it's going to be pure lawlessness, People going to be killing police left and right. So what's going to happen is they're going to ensue martial law, and these National Guards and these Army and the military, are going to come in and step on in place of the police and start detaining and throwing people on FEMA camps, FEMA buses. But the main point of that was to agree with thy adversary quickly, because they're going to come in, and some people, they're not going to, be telling what to do. Some people, they're just going to be getting killed on the spot, and that's just judgment from the Most High. But my main point of why I wanted to read that is Revelation 2:10. For none of those things which thou shalt suffer, behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Now, what did this exceed 10 days? Let me read that again. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. So, I just want to bring that out. to you Akim, and you feel Aquaf. Take this into consideration that Salaki. FEMA camps are part of prophecy. They are a part of prophecy. So, with that, Lord willing, you're edified. I want to say, call Allah Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakadash, Abba Babal, and Shalom.